Welcome back to One Winning Pod, where, holy cow, we were like, this is our last show before the draft. Let's enjoy the draft. And then Thursday came around, and everything happened. What a day it was. Not only did we select in the first round, as we were anticipating, but about, 4 hours beforehand, Lamar Jackson signed. The rumors came out that he was signing, and it quickly changed from a rumor to real. I went back and looked at the timestamps, guys, from when we first heard rumblings to the official Rappaport tweets. It was about 35 minutes. And what a 35 minutes it was. Because, the first, things happened in the Discord. We're checking Twitter. Peter's losing his mind. He's like, no one say anything until it's real. I've been through this before.
Well, but there's so many people on Twitter who are just, teasing, we know something. We're not going to tell you, but we know. I was just I don't care that you know something. I don't care. Good for you. You learned it first. Who cares? Just shut your mouth. Just don't get our hopes up, because there's so much that has leaked with this whole thing, and I'm just I'm just so happy it's over. I'm so happy Lamar is locked up. It's crazy. Oh, man. I thought that this was inevitable. When this whole process started. The tweet a few weeks back did rock my confidence a bit, but it's done. We've got him. It's all under the bridge. Life's good. This is probably the happiest pod we're going to have in, probably since before Lamar's injury. That's probably the happiest the fan base has been since then.
Yeah, for sure. To back you up a little bit, Peter, I definitely had a moment like that too, where I'm pretty sure I remember telling Katie that, I was like, oh my God, I think I had my Apple Watch on at the time, and I was just everything was blowing up. I was like, I gotta take this off. I don't want to hear about how the news of Lamar maybe be signed, and I was just I was totally, I didn't believe it until I saw the Rappaport tweet. I was like, oh, okay, fine. Maybe this might be real. But yeah, until then, I was just oh my God, I was working or something. I can't deal with this right now.
Yeah, it would have been during the workday, wouldn't it?
But,
yeah.
but yeah, I'm with you, man. It was, God, what a crazy turn of events. And yeah, like you said, Alec, 30 some minutes before the smoke turned into flames, and then officially, it became real. It was very, very fast. It put some of Lamar's tweets from the previous days, the SpongeBob meme from what was it, a day or two before, puts that a little bit more into context. I guess Lamar was the first person to kind of start the smoke, but it is what it is. It's done. That's great. I'm really happy as well. Especially with, like I said, a couple, episodes ago with the signing of OBJ, I was it's great if it keeps Lamar. And, we don't know how much it had to contribute to that, but it certainly, I think it helped. So that's great. Now we got him. Now we got Lamar. And, we got some guys in the draft who I think are going to really help round out that offense, which I'm going to be really excited for under Todd Monken this year.
For sure. So the details are, if you haven't seen him already, 5 years, $260 million, average of $52 million a year, $185 million in injury guarantees, which is 71% of the total contract value, $135 guaranteed at signing, which is 51% of the contract. And I think we're recording this literally a day or two too early, which is Wednesday, the 3rd, because we don't have the sign-on bonus, the kind of cash flow in the first 3 years, any rolling or spring guarantees, any injury to fully guaranteed conversions that will go on. But he's signing it tomorrow. There's a press conference at 12:30. So on Thursday, probably when you're hearing it, it'll be that day. So I think once he signs it and goes into league record, that's when all the rest of the details will come out. But that's where we're at. So, it's one of those things. It's a new world for the Ravens, this top quarterback contract on the books. At least, since 2013, right? We haven't dealt with this since 2013. So it's going to change kind of how everything gets approached. But I'm excited. I think, we've been talking about it. He's worth it. And now we can really start to dream about this offense under Todd Monken. And like you said, Chris, man, with these extra weapons, this is going to be a different offense. You can't go into this thinking it's going to look anything like we ever seen Lamar playing before. And that's really exciting to me.
Yeah, definitely. And, keep this guy healthy, and we're looking at a Super Bowl's coming. This guy's too good, and this organization is too good for that marriage to not happen. Throughout all this talk, and I'll admit, I haven't really been super plugged in too much to, the media space, anything on Twitter or talk radio, because we do know during this process there were some detractors. I fully get trading the argument to trade Lamar if his tweet you interpret it as like he personally didn't want to be on the Ravens anymore, which I think was fair before this to read that as maybe he's saying that. And maybe at the time, like something happened in the negotiations that really ticked him off, and he did consider a trade and saw that the market wasn't there. But, I think that this definitely shows that he wants to be here, that he's happy to be here. But, when things were a little shakier, there were the arguments going out there that, this guy doesn't deserve a big contract because, hey, we know he's great in the regular season, but the postseason, man, he's just not doing it yet, And it's a criticism that, sure, I mean, we do know to this date, Lamar has only thrown a single touchdown pass in the postseason, I believe. No, that's not true. Is that true? Yeah, it's true. Sheesh. Yeah, only one touchdown pass in the postseason to his career. But guess who else was saying the same thing going into his fifth season in the NFL? A guy named Peyton Manning. I think we've heard of him. He was pretty good. Absolutely dreadful early in his career in the postseason. And, there's a lot of great quarterbacks who struggled mightily in the postseason, and when they went there in their first 3 seasons, because let's be honest, we don't know what Lamar would have done in years 4 and 5 if he'd stayed healthy. He might have lit it up. The Ravens might have another Super Bowl trophy. Who knows? But I mean, John Elway, Brett Favre, Tom Brady was terrible. During New England's first run into the playoffs, and he got saved by the tuck rule. Bledsoe had to lead him into the Super Bowl after he got hurt against the Steelers. And we can keep going, man. And of course, there are exceptions to this, but I think that the biggest detractors that I've seen have been this guy doesn't deserve the big money because when it comes to the playoffs, he hasn't delivered yet. And while that is true, there's still a lot more of this guy's career to go. And I think with his pedigree, if you're the Ravens and you have a chance to sign this guy and roll the dice and see what happens here, I think you do it. Because this guy has shown that he has talent that very few quarterbacks in this league's history has had. It just seems to me, again, like I said, the talent of this guy is too good, paired with what we already know this organization has done. A Super Bowl appearance just feels inevitable at some point, and I think the Ravens this is money well invested, and I think I'm speaking to most fans when I say that, but, we all know the first time that he has a bad game on this new contract, and he will, because every quarterback has a bad game, even if you're Tom Brady, those people are going to come out in droves and say he's overpaid, and you know that.
For sure.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, I think almost everyone around the NFL will agree. It's definitely like the window is when you have the quarterback on the rookie contract. I don't think anybody is going to doubt like that as sort of like the hypothesis of how you build a Super Bowl winning team. You do it when you have that, because when you have that, you have so much money to be able to fill in other roles. But as soon as you start having to pay that quarterback a lot more money at their market value, it just becomes a lot harder, right? It's not impossible. It just becomes a lot harder. But I mean, yeah, like, so, but the question is basically like, once you have your quarterback who you think is the guy, the next decision of like whether you pay them or whether you try to roll the dice to find another quarterback who might be as good as, but actually probably needs to be better than the option that you had before, because if they were the same, you would think you would have won a Super Bowl already with that quarterback. You know what I mean? Like the math is like really hard to work out. So like, if you find a quarterback that you think is the guy, like even if you have to pay them a lot of money, like it's just, you go with the known commodity at that point, right? It's just, I feel like unless if a team was able to kind of give up their 2 first-round picks, all that stuff, like if that were to happen, I think the Ravens would be in the, like not the best situation, but honestly, like it could have been a situation to be like, okay, you could get excited about all the picks that the Ravens theoretically could have had with this team having to give all that, trade draft capital. But yeah, just in terms of just where the Ravens are right now, I mean, I feel like they've been in like win now mode for a couple of years, and they're continuing to do that, especially with all the moves, like we said at the top with signing a new corner and some of the draft picks and everything. Like they're not a team that's interested in doing a rebuild right now. So, yeah, I mean, people are going to hate on the contract. That's fine. But also, I mean, really, that's like your best option here. So I'm glad it got done. I can't wait to hear Lamar's thoughts on it. Hopefully, all the stuff beforehand, water under the bridge, everything's good. He's going to stay healthy, all that good stuff. It's just, for a little bit, it was getting a little dicey there. So it just feels good to have that all resolved.
Surely does. I'm so excited. And I think you put it well, Chris. Like, the team is built to win right now. Roquan said it in his interview with the Ravens Vault podcast. They had him on during draft night. Like, he's like, anything other than Super Bowl at this point is, it's underachieving. He's like, this roster is built for it. We're ready. And you look at the defense, you look at the offense, what they did there, and you can't help but think, like, man, I think so. like why not us? I mean, obviously, it's always tricky. There's always a lot of luck that goes involved, health, big plays in the playoffs and everything. But you got that stud quarterback now, and with him at the helm, man, anything can happen. We've said that forever. We've seen comebacks, we've seen dominating victories. It's definitely exciting times to be the Ravens. So let's get into the draft. Like I said, the first pick did happen. They did not trade back. And at the 22nd pick, Zay Flowers. Like we all, it felt almost inevitable in a way. It was either going to be him, I felt like, or a corner. And sure enough, Zay Flowers, wide receiver, Boston College, the guy they've been following around since the early days in the process. People were linking us to him. Apparently the number one wide receiver on their board. And I tell you, man, you watch him play, and you're like, yeah, this is the real deal, man. I feel like the way I explain it to other fans is like, remember Marquise Brown? Imagine if he just like had a lot more dog, like just like plays at a different energy level, man. And I'm really excited about him.
Yeah, I mean, I've really warmed up more to this pick as the days have gone on. Going into the draft, I was really hoping that the Ravens would go corner here, and looking at how things came with this draft, I mean, a guy, obviously, Jason was really high on Emmanuel Forbes. We liked him too. He was gone by 16. The Commanders took him. But then you look at two other guys who, we were looking at. Deonte Banks, Maryland, he got drafted 2 picks later at 24, and then first pick of the second round, Joey Porter Jr. gets to play for his dad's team, the Pittsburgh Steelers. They picked him up there. So, I mean, with the way the draft was laid out, you could have made the argument perfectly that the Ravens could have gotten corner there, and either Banks or Porter would have been at value. Maybe you try and trade down to make that look a little better. But, I agree with the Ravens. Zay Flowers is number one receiving prospect in this draft. I actually didn't think that he was going to fall this far. And that was another reason why I was kind of sour on the Ravens drafting a wide receiver in the first round, because the rest of the guys, Jordan Addison doesn't really do it for me. Jackson Smith and Jigba, I like his route running, but that's about it. Quentin Johnston, I've been outspoken on how I like his ceiling, but his floor scares you so much. So, I mean, and Zay Flowers, really, I think of those 4. Yeah, I mean, do I like him more than, Drake London, Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson last year, maybe even George Pickens? I don't know. My initial lean is to say no, but does that matter? If Bateman is the guy that we think he can be, like, Flowers doesn't have to be the alpha guy for this team. He can be a complementary piece, a guy who can take over a game if necessary, if Andrews or Bateman are getting covered or out being schemed out by the defense. There's a lot to like here. I'll just say that. And I think of the wide receivers who were drafted in the first round, if you told me the Ravens had to select one of them, Flowers, for me, by far, the one that I would have wanted from those 4. And I'm not just saying that because the Ravens drafted him, because we'll get down the list. That is not the case that I feel with every pick the Ravens made in this draft. But with this one, yes. Flowers, I think, looking at it right now, the best wide receiver prospect in this draft.
Yeah, I know. The first thing I remember looking at after we picked him up was like, Steve Smith, did he review this guy? And I mean, you just look at the body type of like, this guy screams Steve Smith Sr. Sure enough, yeah. I mean, Steve was kind of banging the drum for Zay Flowers for a bit, and Yeah, I mean that's exciting just to kind of have a guy who might scratch the surface of what a guy like that brought to his offense. I mean, even at what was he 34, 35 whenever he signed with the Ravens, he had a lot of football earlier than that before. But I mean, still he was one of the most exciting receivers that the Ravens have had in quite a while. Very dependable. Yeah, I mean, I think looking at it too, I think it was probably the right choice. I think what the Ravens probably realized that the Vikings were going to go receiver, and if they didn't pick up Zay, he would have been gone, even if they tried trading back. Because I'm just looking at, the back half of the draft, and a couple, defensive tackle here, a couple edge players were taken. So, I think just kind of given where everything was going, I think the pick makes sense. I'll admit, the Joey Porter, I was, hoping for him too, but considering all these other teams also passed on him, particularly with like the Giants, they ended up picking Deontay Banks. I don't feel as bad about the pick. And now these for the Steelers, he's dead to me, so no big deal. But yeah, I mean, I think the Ravens also just being without the second round pick, as much as they, the PR was kind of like, hey, we got our second round pick, and his name is Roquan Smith. Not having that second round pick, I definitely think hurt a little bit, especially as a fan, just like waiting day two for like, okay, when are the Ravens going to pick? When are they going to pick? Like it's just forever. There's so many guys coming off the board. Like, they can't trade up. They don't have the capital. They can't really make a move here. They just got to wait and hope that someone that they really like falls in the third round. So I guess, we should probably go and talk about him. Trenton Simpson, linebacker. Now I feel really bad that we didn't really talk too much about the inside linebacker group when we reviewed the defensive prospects. I think Peter and I at least were convinced Ravens are going to pick a linebacker. They're pretty set here. And what do? Well, they pick up linebacker, Trenton Simpson out of Clemson. And I mean, he's exciting. I think looking more into him, I didn't have a chance to kind of view his tape as much before, but I think his positional versatility, I think, is really interesting. I think he could be, he doesn't have to be a guy who needs to necessarily start right away, but I think he could have an impact in certain packages, which is really enticing.
Yeah, I mean, so first off, to back up, I think that, again, when we're talking about the Ravens looking at wide receiver over corner and at that pick, I think you got to give credit to them for looking at the board, looking at the classes, and what you were going to get, what was still going to be available after that pick. Because you look at what the wide receivers that were drafted after Flowers, and you see a lot of names flying off the board before the Ravens got to pick again that we talked about, that we really liked. You got Mingo going at pick 39 to the Panthers. You had Jaden Reed going to the Packers at 50. Tank Dell got drafted in the second round as well, although third round, 69th to Houston Texans. Both the Tennessee receivers, Hyatt and Tillman, gone in back-to-back picks, 73 and 74. Even Josh Downs was gone before the Ravens got to pick. So another thing that I think we need to take into consideration there, if you're still hung up on the corner, which I get. I understand if you thought that was a bigger need for the Ravens at that pick. It's just that even though we didn't see the early run on wide receivers that we saw last year, there was still a run. And the prospects after Josh Downs was picked, a few picks before the Ravens took Simpson, I think, and I think the rest of us are probably in agreement here, because I'm not seeing a ton of names that we brought up at all. The quality went down pretty quickly. So I think that was a good move by the Ravens. And with this Trenton Simpson pick, I mean, I don't hate it. I'm also kind of still not sure about it. I think there's a lot to like with him. Athleticism's great. He did have a dip in production his senior year, although reading into it, it seems that there was a change in defensive coordinator, at least scheme, and he wasn't being used as much as, kind of a Swiss Army knife. They're kind of setting him to play at one set position, and that's not really, he's thriving more as being a guy who could really get rotated around in that Clemson defense. One thing I think I noticed with these later picks that is kind of a theme with some of these guys is they're guys who you can see could play multiple positions. And maybe that, I don't know if that was by coincidence or not, but you're looking at a team, you don't have as many picks as you do most years, and you're picking up some guys who could get plugged in at multiple spots, depending on how certain aspects of their game translate to the NFL level. So I do wonder if that was in the back of the Ravens' mind, okay, we don't have as many picks, but let's see if we can plug as many needs as we can. But yeah, I mean, I don't know, Alec, what's your take on Simpson? Because I know that you were particularly down on this interior linebacker class, although Simpson isn't strictly an interior linebacker.
Yeah, this is a really interesting pick. And I intentionally went last for two reasons for this kind of discussion, because at first I was like, I can't believe we just drafted another inside linebacker in the third round. Like, we did it with Malik Harrison. Like, we have PQ. It's just like, these guys are obsessed with spending all their capital on this like non-premium position. And you already got Roquan, and I'm like, Roquan covers up your problems. This is like where you could spend less now at your like will spot. And I'm like, what the heck are they doing? But I think between this pick and the next pick, you can read the tea leaves, and there is something they're doing. But we'll get to that. So if you talk about the prospect, it's to say that he's like PQ is almost an understatement, but he's better. Like, that's the thing that kind of makes me excited about him, is that I think he's a better prospect than PQ. And we got him in the third round. He's faster. I mean, the guy's nuts. He's 0.01 slower than Zay Flowers, but 50 pounds heavier and 5 inches taller. And his 10-yard split is 0.02 slower than Zay. And again, 50 pounds heavier and 5 inches taller. Like, I mean, that's just freakish, right? The way he can track down players and get after them. Like, no one escapes him. But the other thing, like you said, Peter, that's so interesting, and I think it's really astute to say, with these limited picks, they picked these guys that have played all over the field. Like Simpson, you could see him playing in a pseudo safety role. You could see him playing as like potentially a Sam. Like, he could be all over the place, and that's pretty neat. I will say at first though, like, I don't know how they're going to use him. I have a hunch, and I'll get to it, but like, he's a weird he's like a Swiss Army knife, like Hamilton was when we drafted him. And like, when the intrigue happened when we drafted Hamilton, it's like, how are we going to use him? What the defense going to look like? I feel like this pick ignited that same flame, and I'm super curious. And then they went ahead in the fourth round, and they drafted Tavius Robinson, edge out of Ole Miss. And that's when it all came kind of clear. So I think, based on this pickup, and I talked to Jason, he's thinking it too. I said, I think they're going to start running some 3-3-5. So, 3 linemen, 3 linebackers, 5 defensive backs. So that could be a form of nickel, and they haven't run that in a long time. And then he said, yeah, or they could just run a 4-3, which is also like kind of interesting. So now you're getting that third linebacker out there. And I was just like, dang, so they might be changing their scheme. And then you get Tavius Robinson. He can play 5-tech. He can play 3-tech. He's 6'6". Kind of reminds you of a guy we might have just lost. I mean, no one's quite like Campbell, and I think he has a very long way to go. But you can tell yourself a story of like a new age Campbell that they're trying to get with this Tavius Robinson pick. They compared him to Zadarius. So, 6'6", 3 3/4 arms, 4.66 40, 163 10-yard split. He has all the measurables, and I think Dr. Rush is going to have a lot of fun trying to unlock this guy. But he's definitely a project. So I don't know. We'll see. But Coach DC really likes him. He's going to be putting out a video tonight, he said. So once that's out, I'll link to it in the show notes. But he's impressed with what he saw, and I watched a little bit of his film, and I'm like, yeah, I could see what they saw in him. Like, I thought in the third round pick, they could have had Ringo. Keely Ringo, one of Chris's guys, was still available, kind of surprising. And he kept dropping. He went all the way to the fourth round, early fourth, but he dropped. And I think it was one of those classic things, him and Adebore and a few other guys who dropped. It's like, what did we not know about them? Darnell Washington, he apparently had knee issues or whatever. So, there's always, once people kind of start falling like that, we were saying during the live stream, like, you can't take them off your board, assuming there's something you just don't know, and you no longer can like really evaluate them like you thought. So I don't hate the fact that they had Simpson and Robinson at those spots, but there were a lot of corners I liked in the pre-draft process that made sense there. And I don't know how you guys felt seeing, I think particularly after the 4th round pick, like once they didn't go the corner there, I was like, we're not going to get any of the corners we talked about.
Yeah, I mean, so for me, I actually take a slightly different take on it. I mean, so I understand what we said about Ringo. I don't know. I wasn't sold on him though, as like, is he definitely better than what we already drafted last year? And so I mean, for myself, with cornerback, I was kind of the same mind that I was with wide receiver. It was just like, if it's not one of the top end guys that you can get in the 1st or 2nd round, I didn't know how interested I was, because we had already invested 2 guys in that vein the previous season, and there are veterans still out there on the streets. As you know, we'll get to that because the Ravens did make a move regarding that. So Simpson, I didn't mind it, although the 4th round pick is the one that I'm glad you described it, like right there with what you think the Ravens might be doing from a personnel standpoint, because I did not get that pick. And I'm interested to watch Coach DC's take, because I don't see it with Tavius Robinson in the highlights or in the film that I've watched yet. I'm not a professional scout, so let me put that disclaimer there. And I did watch a breakdown of, I feel bad that I can't call out who this person was, because it was not a channel that I'd ever seen before. So again, I also don't even know if this individual, what their credentials are, but they pointed out a lot of things in his game that looked incredibly raw and not ready for prime time. But like we said, he's a project, right? So that's not completely unsurprising. When we're talking about a pure edge guy just in, a vacuum, I mean, I like the 2 guys who were drafted after him better. Nick Herberg from Wisconsin. I think Pittsburgh got a good one there. And we know that Pittsburgh does a good job at drafting as well, so I think that's good. Yasir Abdullah was drafted by the Jaguars a few picks after that. Not as high on him, but another guy that, if we're just talking about a pure player, I liked him better too than Robinson. But, what you're saying, if it's a scheme fit thing, then I can understand going for him in the 4th round there. And, honestly, like you're saying, the guy's got a freakish physique. He looks like he can put on some more weight with his build. He is a little lanky for someone that size. This could end up being an under the radar pick. I'm rooting for all these guys, even if I don't fully get a pick when it's made. So, let's see. I'm really intrigued by what you're saying. This could unlock for the Ravens as far as adding new packages to the scheme. I think that is something that would really be advantageous for this group. Yeah, we'll see.
I feel like edge is a weird position group for us because it's kind of set, but also not. Like, we have a lot of players there who we think can be contributors, but honestly, the production hasn't been there, and it's a lot more hype at this point. So honestly, adding another player to that, I think could kind of like help the competition such that the edge players are now more set. I think people are a little low on OA right now. I think he still has time to kind of turn things back on. I think people are high on Ojabo, but he's only played extremely limited action. Bowser, we know we have with them, solid player, but honestly, nothing really more. So I don't mind it from that perspective. I think my only concern, really, honestly, is I think I like what the Ravens are doing in terms of like try to improve position groups, like basically like draft for 2 years in the future or something, right? So I mean, like the Ravens drafted a bunch of tight ends last year. They didn't really need. I mean, obviously, I guess Greg Roman needs tight ends or whatever, but like we didn't really need 2 rookie tight ends last year. But what we didn't see is that Boyle is not the same player. Andrews is still definitely the guy, but now we have a luxury of riches at tight end, right? Or look at some other position groups of like defensive tackle. We didn't really need defensive tackles at a bunch, but like now going into this year, we can afford to let go of Campbell because now we have 2 really good guys behind him, Washington and Menabuke, right? So like I kind of look at it maybe from that lens, but where I'm like, the Ravens really didn't address anything at all is running back. And I know next year is going to be a huge problem because all 3 running backs basically on our roster, like none of them are going to be back. Now, I don't know whether that means that the Ravens are definitely going to like re-sign one of them. Obviously, you know, there's a lot of questions for that of like what the contract value is, and re-signing a running back off the rookie contract is like not a great idea and like all that stuff. But like, I mean, just 2 years ago when we lost all 3 of these guys to season-ending injuries, we were boned, right? We were completely destroyed. The offense was not to the same level that it was because we had to get guys off the street. I feel kind of like that of maybe there was a guy there that like the Ravens should have hit on a running back, even if it was a developmental guy, because that means next year, okay, you go in with a solution for next year, right? So I don't mind the approach, but I feel like with that, you basically are ending up with the Ravens always take a risk on like one position group. And, last year was, wide receiver. The year before that, offensive tackle, right? I think this year, like running back to me is probably one of those, like maybe corner, although we hadn't gotten to the news yet, but there's a little bit more reinforcements on that side. But that's like the only thing that makes me a little bit uneasy is like at a pick here. It's just like I would have preferred maybe another position group.
There's some running back news.
There is running back news.
I'll just say.
But
I'll say that. But I think there's running back news, and it sounds like Alec agrees with me.
Yeah, there's definitely running back news. But I understand what you're saying, Chris, because I was thinking that around 5th round. So in the 5th round, let me just quickly double check this. I mean, there's a lot of good running backs that went. So as the Bengals pick was after ours, Chase Brown went to the Bengals. I remember we talked about him in our Red Star video. I'm worried about that. If Mixon's gone, I think Chase Brown's going to be the starter there. So I was like, oh, we could have gotten Chase Brown. Another guy I loved was Zach Evans. We discussed that. He went in the 6th round of the Rams, and I was like, again, the Rams, they're usually kind of hip to something. So I completely get what you're saying, but like Peter said, they got a guy, an undrafted free agency, and it was on Jason's big board, and Jason's already saying he's making the team. And I'm like,
wait, we jumping ahead? I thought we were going to talk about that.
No, I'm just saying.
He's talking some more picks.
I'm teasing it. Yeah, I'm like, so there might be the reinforcements might be already there. So we'll see.
Right.
We'll see. There's some caveats though too, which we'll get to with the player, and I think I already know
he's not
which
an
of the two.
Back.
Right.
He's fun for 3rd down. But anyways, do we want to do the next pick then?
I think so.
All right.
I know we love jumping around on this show, but
it's hard not to. All these things are intertwined.
No, it really is. I'm surprised we've stayed as far on course as we have.
So, Caillou Blue Kelly, cornerback out of Stanford, first person we ever drafted out of Stanford. This was the biggest head scratcher for me. So in the 4th round, Darius Rush was still there. Ricks was still there. And I was like, I would like either of those guys. And then the 5th round, Ricks was still on the board. And I'm like, really? So they went ahead and got this guy. Doesn't have legendary speed. Doesn't have legendary change of direction. But you can definitely tell he went to Stanford. He's very smart. And he's able to like play pretty darn well in zone. He had good performances against Drake London. A decent performance against Addison. Apparently, like the Ravens have been watching him for 2 years. And Corey Frazier, their West Coast scout, was pounding the table for him. So they conceded to his requests. And here we are. So he's been drafted. This is the biggest head scratcher for me. Maybe the 6th round pick is also there. But what did you guys think? I felt like when we went corner, it wasn't what I was expecting at all. It wasn't a guy we ever talked about. And like there were guys we scouted still around and seemed like better traits. So I don't know. I'm gonna have to just see it with this guy. I'm not sure what to believe.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think they really liked this guy's physical. Like the year before his last year in college he led the Pac-12 in passes defended with 13, which included 2 interceptions. That number dropped in his senior year to 6, which is still very good. You look at the tape, he like you said, he plays well in zone. The scouting reports I've read don't speak well to his ability to, really play down the field. You see in I think the Draft Network had in their notes that he rarely, I think this is a direct quote, basically, he rarely turns his head to look back at the quarterback after, he's beat. So, that's risking getting called pass interference at the next level. I understand why they went corner, because you can never have too many corners. Kind of feels like these days you need to exit the draft with at least one. But yeah, I agree. I think the question is why him over some of the other guys who would get drafted later. Why not take a shot over another guy in the 4th round? So we'll just kind of have to see. I mean, sometimes there's these picks and it's just, they're literally just throws at a dartboard, and they are here for a few seasons and don't see much playing time. Looking at, Iman Marshall, allegedly,
Who?
I don't think we're in full agreement among the fan base that he ever was a player, but yeah, I'm a guy, I guess I'm interested to see in preseason, see what he does. But yeah, it's the 5th round. You take shots.
Yeah, it's fine with me. By the time we hit the 5th round, even if you picked a corner, that's not a solution for this year. It's a developmental guy, and that's fine. If he has, if he plays for at least one game, he's already better than Iman Marshall, right? Like I honestly, I don't think this is a pick for this year. Like, this is a pick for, you watch this guy in preseason this year, you watch him next year, you see what he can contribute. I don't really think he's going to be a solution for corner this year, and that's okay. I think the other thing to kind of always keep in mind too is I know we're really scared at corner this year, but honestly, there's a lot of developmental growth that happens between seasons for some of these players. So even myself personally, I'm not super low on Brandon Stevens. I think he has a lot of positive traits. There's some people that he needs to go back to safety. He definitely does not need to go back to safety, in my opinion. I think he's been more effective at corner. Do I think he can play better? Absolutely. But I don't think that he was an awful guy to go into the season with as, your number 3 corner if you need to. And even Pepe Williams, yeah, he was a little rough in the first season, but I do think if those guys were asked to step up a little bit more this year, I do think having a full off season to kind of get more in NFL shape, to go through all the rookie, all the mini camps and everything and training camp, I think that's going to do wonders for them. So, if the Ravens weren't going to dress corner in the first, honestly, with the first 2 picks, after that, that's fine. Just pick a guy that you can develop. So it sounds like he's, like you said, Alec, it sounds like he's a really smart guy. My only non-football thing related to this, I feel like the Ravens have gone really hard into his pitch a video game to Microsoft kind of thing, and he almost I'm getting John Urschel vibes a little bit, and he's oh, this guy's a genius. And really cool for them. I'm not hating on that at all. I think that's really nice, but just it seems like they're really hyping it up for an off the field kind of thing, and I just I don't want him to be a disappointment, because then I feel it takes away from that a little bit, but yeah. Well,
it's funny, man. Like we said, so Ricks went undrafted, but he's going to the Eagles because of course he is. The Eagles got everybody in this draft. They had a steal of a draft. The Steelers had an amazing draft. I'm not looking forward to talking about them in the state of the division. They picked up Corey Trice. That was a guy we liked going into this aircraft carrier frame. And then the Rams, again, talking about the Rams and their kind of savvy picking, they went Hodges Tomlinson, who was projected to be a really nice slot. So there were a lot of interesting corners that went after. We'll have to keep an eye on them and see, how they do in the league. And we'll see how this pick goes. But this was definitely one of the ones that made me scratch my head a little bit. Next up, I'll take one for the team. I don't mind. 6th round pick, Malisala Amuave Ulu, I think. He played right tackle at Oregon. He's going to be a guard in this league almost for sure. Watch this film. He has the frame, 6'6", okay arms. He moves all right, but he kind of was a little lungy. I just felt he feels like a huge developmental prospect. So I don't know what to make of him. You'd assume he makes the team, right? But honestly, after talking to Jason, like I wouldn't be that surprised. He said it first. He's like, I think they might IR him this year. Like he might be that far off from actually being able to contribute at the NFL level. Hopefully, he can turn into something. But he was saying that he actually likes some of the guys we picked up, UDFA wise, better for maybe making the team this year and contributing. So we'll see. I don't know what you guys thought. If you guys had a chance to watch his film, to me, like I said, like he looks just stupidly raw, and it kind of looks like they did the same thing I was doing, where I pulled out, what was that guy's name? Now I'm blanking.
McClendon?
Yeah, McClendon. Like they're just like traits. Yep, pick him.
I was actually looking. McClendon went after Kelly in the 5th round, so he also went to the Rams. So, yeah, I mean, if the Ravens really liked him in the 5th round, that would have been the time to get him. But, yeah, just looking at the rest, like, I know a lot of the guys that I looked at beforehand, most of them, I think, gone by the 3rd round, actually. I think Tippmann was like the 2nd round. I think Ricky Stromberg, was the 3rd round, at least as far as, like, center sort of guard prospects. So, yeah, it definitely feels like that to me. I haven't looked at his tape either. I'm definitely curious to see what this guy does in the preseason. I'm going to be looking at him quite a bit. I feel like the only thing I have to say here is, like, the Ravens, just look at their track record, man. Like, they pick up a lot of late round guys, developmental guys that take a little bit to become contributors, but they do. So, I can't hate this pick. Like, I think we needed, do we need a guard right now to start? No. Will we need developmental guys that can step in for a game or two when needed? Absolutely. So, if he could do it this year, that's great. If not, no big deal. I think we've got the coaching staff and they have the track record to show that they can develop these guys.
Yeah, I agree with Alec. Raw on the tape. There are some athletic traits that look really intriguing. I think particularly he's got a fast jump in the run game while pulling. It moves pretty fast for someone that size, but also when he moves, like it doesn't look like very fundamental. It just looks a bit he needs work. I think that's a great thing to say, to put it concisely, but he's got physical tools that are intriguing if he's able to get coached up. So yeah, I don't have much more to say than that. I think that it's the Ravens just trying to bolster their young offensive line depth as they prepare for Zeitler's eventual departure from the team and just anything else that they might need on the interior.
Well, that was the picks. Those were the 5 picks that the Ravens had. Oh, but wait. After their press conference, they decided to trade back in, and they swapped next year's 6th round pick to the Browns to go ahead and select Andrew Voorhees out of USC. This guy, probably a day 2 guy at guard, and tears his ACL running the 40. So he's out all year. But the thing that's crazy about him, and I'm sure you heard by now, is after he tore his ACL, homeboy ripped 38 reps at the bench press, setting the record for offensive lineman this year. And, so the guy's real strong, plays super well when he's available. But I hate to say, guys, he's had a lot of injuries, a lot of knee injuries, ankle injuries, lower body injuries. His availability has just not been there. So I am a little concerned about his ability to stay healthy. And we'll see, though, because I think like if he is healthy and the strength and conditioning coaches here can get him on the right track, this could be a huge steal for the Ravens. Like, you're not going to get a guy like this in the 6th round next year, most likely. And yeah, you're only going to get 3 years of him out of his rookie contract, but he's already going to be 26 years old or something like that, 26.7 by the time he takes his first snap next year. He's older almost than Marlon Humphrey. He first started going to school in 2017. The guy's old, man. Like in a draft full of olds, this guy was particularly old. And he's redshirting this year. It's like, woo boy. But you know what? If he's a good guard and you get him for 2 or 3 years at that capital, I'm not too mad.
I think this is the perfect way to use a 7th round pick. I mean, you're almost guaranteed to have this guy, just be a trivia question. For later on great Ravens 7th-round picks. Geno Stone and...
Geno Stone. It's like there's no...
That's right. That's it. Yeah, it's like, Michael Campanaro, preseason hero, I guess. I don't know. But, yeah, I mean, it's like, yeah, is his injuries a red flag? Sure, absolutely. But at a 7th-round pick, you take that shot. You take that shot because in the case that it does work out, whether or not it's likely, you got a huge steal, like you said. So, yeah, you watch a tape of this guy. It's really encouraging for when he's out there on the field. He fights. It's not just combine strength that he has. You watch the tape. He's got game strength too. I think it's a great gamble because it's not a gamble. It's just like if he works out, great. If he doesn't, you gave up nothing to take that shot. So I think that was a really savvy move there by the Ravens.
I mean, I think the biggest comparison to me is James Hurst. I know he wasn't a draft pick, but he's another guy who was like 2nd, 3rd round talent and only fell due to injury. Ravens ended up getting him undrafted. And, yeah, I mean, it was a little rough the first couple of years, obviously. I think, for a while, I think people gave him a bad rap of, like, he was the rep that let the guy, blow up Flacco's ACL in his 2nd season, right? But this guy is still starting in the NFL. He's a starting tackle for the Saints, right? I mean, he's been in the league for 10 years, I think. I mean, that's fantastic for an undrafted guy. And, even for the Ravens, like, he was a contributor. I think he was starting in his 3rd, maybe 4th year here, but he had significant kind of, backup experience for a couple of years at that time. Ravens ended up re-signing him for like 4 years. So, I don't want to put all that on Voorhees here, but that is like, if you can get a guy with that talent, even if the 3 or 4 years, whatever, even if you redshirt him this year, that doesn't really matter too much, at least with the, being a 7th-round pick. Like, honestly, a lot of 7th-round picks don't even make it their 4 full years anyway because they get beat out by other guys who have, more talent, right? So if he's got the talent, if he can start, just get him healthy, and then, next year, get him in training camp, see what he can do. Yeah, I don't have a problem with that at all. I think it's a great pick, especially at the tail end of the draft. Yeah, I'm just looking, like, I don't know if there are too many guys, at least that I would know at this point, like of people that I would pick up around that. So, and what was the draft capital to be able to get it? It was like a 6th-round pick from the following year, I believe.
Yeah, next year 6.
Yeah, that's fine. I think the Ravens at some point, like, hopefully they'll. Well, I guess we haven't talked. I mean, I don't want to get too far ahead, but I mean, the Ravens might have some guys leave next year, in which case they maybe should get some comp picks. I guess we haven't figured all of that stuff out yet, but regardless, like, I don't think the Ravens are going to go into next year having fewer draft picks than this year. So I think, that's a low risk, kind of high reward situation. So definitely cool with that.
Most certainly. I'm excited. Like you said, if he hits, that's amazing. And if he doesn't, oh well. Like, it's just pretty low capital, huge return. I'm surprised how many people slept on him. Like, a lot of people got picked, a lot of guards. Like, there's a guard right before him, a guard right after him. Like, it was guard city. So kind of surprised that no one touched him earlier. Honestly, sort of surprised we didn't just pick him in the 6th. But I guess they really wanted a guy to be able to compete this year. So we shall see. All right. Next phase in the doc. Undrafted free agents. Let's start off with the one we've been teasing the most. We did get a running back. Peter, take it away.
Yeah, so this is Keaton, I believe is how you say it, Mitchell, out of ECU. This is a guy who I did look at for when researching this running back class. I didn't include him in my short list of guys that I thought had earmarked for the Ravens, mainly because, as Alex said earlier, this guy is not a 3-down back at the NFL level. He is a pure speed guy, but the speed is electrifying. This is a guy who has big playability. Fun fact, he is the son of Anthony Mitchell, who was part of the Ravens Super Bowl 35 team, was the guy who returned the blocked kick against Tennessee in that divisional game for a touchdown. So that's cool. Got the Ravens connection there. But we know the Ravens have had success before with undrafted running backs. Most famously, of course, Gus Edwards, who is on the team. If this guy's able to make the team, which I agree that with Jason that he has a great shot to do so, and he's here next season, he could get some serious work in this offense. Again, he's not going to be a lead back, but he has serious playmaking ability, and I think that, yeah, this is a great running back class. There's a lot of running backs I would have rather had over him, but like we talked about, it wasn't a prime need for the Ravens. So to get a guy like this undrafted, honestly, I think this guy should have been a 6th or 7th round pick. So yeah, this is a guy that I think is going to be really fun to watch this preseason.
Yeah, so he's 5'8", 179, but he's one of those guys, man. Like, one of his knocks is his patience, but if he's able to figure out his patience a little bit, with that speed he has in a gap scheme like we've been running previously, and like our line's kind of built for that at the moment, oh my goodness, like he's gonna just fly, dude. Like, you watch his highlights and it's just nuts. He's fast. I mean, he's a fun player. This is exactly what we're talking about. What did we say? We said undrafted free agent, really late round guy, fits the scheme well. Like, that's what you're looking for. And it turns out there were so many running backs that a guy that fit our scheme was undrafted. I mean, there were some guys that are a little bit more interesting in the 5th or 6th round, but we got other players there, and we were able to get this running back here. And I think given the state of affairs with our team, not the worst choice to go undrafted here. So this is awesome. Another place that we went heavy is offensive linemen. Kind of getting back to that comment I made earlier. We went ahead and got Connecticut center Jake Gwindon, offensive lineman Tashawn Manning, offensive tackle Takeem Doss, lineman Jalen Thomas. I mean, they just like went nuts. Oregon State offensive lineman Brandon Kipper. Like, these guys are all going to be competing their butts off. We'll be seeing them in the preseason games and trying to make sense of them all. And I think Manning probably has the best chance to make the roster based off like a very brief assessment. But definitely keen to watch these guys grow and improve and play at the preseason level.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to need a lot of camp bodies. I'm looking forward to kind of seeing who's able to kind of fill out that second level of offensive linemen. The fortunate thing for it is, like, we get a lot of film on those guys, I think, in the preseason to watch, which is really great. Because I know most of the starters really don't play much at all. Even like some of them, like, Zeitler, I don't imagine he's going to have any snaps, if any, in preseason. So I think the good news, I think, particularly for offensive linemen, is that I think there's just a lot of film you can see on these guys, because obviously you have to have 5 of them out each time, and usually I think the Ravens are good about mixing in second and third string guys as well in the preseason, which is great. So yeah, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if one of these guys ends up making some waves in the preseason. The other thing to kind of note too, because I feel like the big news was Ben Powers getting his new contract, but Cologne as well was picked up by the Jets. So we do have kind of a need for another sort of backup center/guard, sort of like tweener sort of guy. So even if it doesn't end up being Lualu out of Oregon, our 6th round pick, it could be any one of these undrafted guys as well. So definitely a couple spots that are going to need to be filled.
Yeah, definitely. I think the Ravens are being really prudent here, picking up a bunch of guys, and yeah, we'll see. I have not taken a look at any of these guys yet, I'll admit, but like Chris is saying, I think we'll get a chance to look at a decent amount of these guys in the preseason. Yeah, I mean, I guess other guys of note that the Ravens picked up, 2 guys on defense, I think, are candidates for, we don't have this guy every year, but it feels like every 3 or 4 seasons we have the defensive rookie who has the fan base enamored in August due to scrub time heroics, and then the fan base goes crazy when he ultimately does not make the final roster and then forgets his name by mid-October. I'm looking at cornerback Corey Mayfield Jr. as well as Lafayette linebacker Malik Ham. Both of them, you look at their highlight tapes on YouTube, they look like they have skill sets that are going to make some splashes in preseason. Mayfield There's a lot of great turnovers, worthy plays, some sacks, strip sack. He flies around the ball. Ham was able to get a lot of sacks at Lafayette by basically just running around the tackle, not really putting in any moves, but he had a lot of speed off the edge there. Don't know if their skills really translate to the NFL level, but I worth a look in the preseason, I guess. So, and then outside of that, I guess you got tight end Brian Walker, who looks like, excuse me, I didn't look at Brian Walker, but Travis Vokolek could be a guy that they're looking at as a blocking tight end. Maybe he makes the practice squad. Maryland wide receiver Dante Damas Jr. I'm sure some people locally are excited that he'll get a shot, being from Maryland. And going back to Delaware roots, quarterback Nolan Henderson. Tape doesn't look terribly impressive. Kind of got a little bit of Doug Flutie vibes, but who knows who the backup quarterback's going to be in 2024. So maybe he'll give Anthony Brown a run for his money. Who knows? But definitely a lot of interesting names. We'll just have to see which, if any, of these guys. I mean, it feels like one or two of these guys, and maybe it is just Keaton. But we know the Ravens' record, so we know someone here we're talking about is going to be around the organization for a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. I think the guys you just mentioned wouldn't surprise me at all if Vokolek becomes like the next practice squad tight end. It's sticking around for a while. The guy could definitely block. And then you have Dante Demas Jr., the wide receiver out of Maryland, like you mentioned. He's going to be competing with Shamar Bridges for being in that practice squad wide receiver darling. And I don't think anyone's going to be calling his name given the fact that this group is so deep now. But he'll be there. So I definitely think those guys are going to have a shot. And like you said, offensive linemen, defensive linemen, this is a great opportunity for them to try to find somebody like the Colorado State Pablo, defensive tackle Trey Bolts, defensive tackle out of Ohio, Caesar. I mean, there's a lot of guys here that will compete. These are classic guys that the Ravens try to find, like Nichols or Pierce or, you name it, some undrafted big guy. They're really good at it, so keep an eye on those guys during the preseason, and we'll see what happens. And I think for the last order of business, because it happened today, is the reason the Ravens probably passed on all those corners, and we were talking about on the live stream after the third and fourth round, like it kind of felt inevitable. But yes, indeed, Rock Ya-Sin is the pickup. The Ravens picked him up for about $6 million, I think. He's young, 26 years old. He's played well in his time. He still has big traits. I'm excited to see what he can do in this defense. I think it's a good move for the Ravens. And I think this is it. That was the piece, man. I think now you can go into the season thinking, all right, like we're locked and loaded. I would love to add a Houston. I love to add a Peters. I love to add like one or two older guys that kind of pop up. But at this point, with this signing, I think we have plugged all the holes. Team is deep. There's young guys after that. Thumbs up.
Yeah, I mean, I think I have to agree. This is, man, I'm trying to think of the correct word to say here, but I think it's the most stable roster that we've seen with the Ravens in quite some time. Sure, there's some position groups that you'd like to be a little bit better, but like every one of these position groups is good. Like now that we drafted Flowers and Odell, man, and I have to say, I remember at the end of the season, I said, man, my dream for this offseason is we sign a vet free agent wide receiver who's can at least be what first half 2021 Sammy Watkins was for this team. And we draft someone in the first round who's ready to play in week one. And I think we got that. I mean, obviously we got to see what Odell's health is, but if it ends up not being it, and Flowers and Odell aren't the answers to this offense, helping out Bateman and Andrews, it wasn't without EDC trying. Like the Ravens really tried there. And yeah, like we said, they shored up some depth in the draft and with some other free agent pieces. Props to the front office. This team is ready to go. And of course, we can't forget, they did the most important thing. They got the quarterback. They got him signed long term. Luckily, the Orioles are doing well because I'm impatient now. I'm impatient for this season to start.
Yeah. Back to the Rocket Sin signing. Yeah, it's funny. Like I feel like we got the rumor that he was doing a physical probably, I don't know, a few weeks before, a month or so before or something, and I felt like we all just forgot that this guy was going to be a potential signing, but I do really like it. The number one thing, man, is just like we got to keep this guy healthy. I guess we don't know. I don't know. Do we know for sure? Are we playing in the Meadowlands at all this year?
Oh God.
I hope not. I mean, I would think the only team that we'd play would be the Jets, but I would hope that they would be coming here. But if we can avoid that stadium entirely, I think we'll be okay. Obviously, that wrecked Kyle Fuller last year, week 1.
We're safe.
We're safe.
We're
okay,
safe.
Good. Yeah, I mean, Fuller was a guy I was really excited for last year. I think he was kind of the equivalent of Rocky Sin this year, and but with him coming back from that ACL tear, that's too much risk. Obviously, I mean, we just saw it last year with Marcus Peters coming back from his ACL. Was rough. He was definitely not the same guy. And I wouldn't mind if the Ravens wanted to pick him up around training camp because, they weren't seeing the development from some of the guys that we've, would like to step up, like Brandon Stevens, Pepe Williams. But if we have to, it's fine. But I do think, Rocky Sin is definitely he's one of those guys you can step in at CB2 and be serviceable there, particularly in the beginning of the season before the guys who, are kind of behind him to be able to take more meaningful snaps. You just have to, pray that these guys are healthy. I think that's honestly the biggest question mark, which is, a little unfortunate, but, kind of what I said earlier, just that's kind of the risk you have to take here. The Ravens can't afford to take a Zay Flowers and then, also a top end corner or 2 corners in this draft. I guess that just wasn't in the cards this year. So you have to do that all the time. But I do agree with you guys. This seems like a really solid roster. I'd argue maybe a little top heavy in a couple position groups, but honestly, I think there's definitely a lot of talent here for sure.
Well, there you have it. I think we did a pretty good job, guys, keeping this episode a little shorter. We were like, holy cow, this is so much news. But you know what? It's super exciting. I think this is, like you said, Peter, earlier on, the most upbeat we've been in a long, long time. And, yeah, I mean, a lot to look forward to for all of us, right?
Absolutely.
Well, I think the next episode we'll be back is for the schedule release, which is on May 12th. We'll probably record it on the 15th. Get that out to your devices shortly thereafter. So until then, unless something crazy happens, which we were talking before, and we don't know what that would be. Even if they sign another veteran, that's not crazy enough to do a show. Maybe Lamar drops some entire gym trivia at the press conference tomorrow. But yeah, we'll be around. You can find us on Twitter at OneWinningPod. You can find
us on Twitter, YouTube, One Winning Pod. Email us at onewinningpod@gmail.com.
There it is. Chris got it all. We'll see you in a couple weeks.